In this lecture, we are going to learn and understand what are type guards in TypeScript. In TypeScript, type guards are a powerful mechanism that allows you to refine the type of a variable based on runtime checks. And this enhances code reliability and maintainability by providing more precise type information to the compiler. Now, what actually is a type guard? Type guard are expressions that typically return a Boolean value or the variable itself cast to a more specific type. They are used within conditional blocks like if statement or function return types to narrow down the type of variable after a type check. And this enables you to safely access properties or methods that might only exist on certain subtypes. Let's try to understand common type guard techniques. Let's go to VS Code. And to understand type guards, let me first go ahead and let me create a type. For that, I'm going to use this type keyword and I'm going to create a custom type called string or number. And this string or number type, it can allow us to store a string value or a number value in a variable. So here I'm going to use the union type, string union number. So for any variable, when we specify the type as string or number, that variable can only store a value of either string type or number type. Now I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call this function as addition. And this function, it is going to take two parameters. It is going to take a parameter a, and I'm going to specify the type here as string or number. And it is going to take another parameter b. And for this also, I'm going to specify the type as string or number. Okay, now when we are going to call this addition function, there I can pass string values like hello, comma, world, or I can also pass values of number type, for example, 20, comma, 30, or I can also pass a value of string type and number type, something like this. So all these three will work. Right. And for each of these cases, we will have different results. For example, when we are passing two strings, in that case, this addition, it should concatenate these two strings. Right. When we are passing two numeric values, 20 and 30, in that case, it should add those two numbers. And when we are passing a string value and a number value, in that case, again, it should concatenate this string value and this number value by converting it to a string. So we can simply say return a plus b. But when I do this here, you will see that it is giving us an error that operator plus cannot be applied to types, string or number. Because this plus can be applied on string type or on number type, but the string or number, it is a custom type, right? So here what we are going to do is we are going to do the type check. And based on the type check, we are going to return results. For example, we will check if type of, so for that we are using this type of operator, we have already talked about it. So if type of a is equal to string, or if type of b is equal to string, so if any one of these parameter is a string, what we are going to do is we are going to concatenate them. So for that we will say a dot to string. So we are converting that a to string type plus b dot to string, and then we are going to return the result. Okay, so here first we are doing the type check because this a and b, it is of type string or number, and that's why we cannot directly use this plus operator on string or number. We can use it on only string type or only number type. So we are checking if a is of type string or b is of type string. In that case, we will do the concatenation, the string concatenation. Otherwise, if a and b are not of string type, in that case, we are going to add them. And now you see, we don't have any error. So this function here, it is either going to return a string value or it is going to return a number value. So if I hover over this addition, you will see that the return type of this addition is string or number. Okay, so here we are doing the type guarding. So using type of operator, we can do type guarding. This is one example. And this example is with simple types like string and number. Now let's see how we can do it with complex types. So again, I'm going to comment this code. Let me also comment this type here. Let's go ahead and let's create a class. And here I'm going to create a very simple class. I'll call it as animal. Okay, in this class, I'm going to have a method. I'll call it as make sound. Okay, and what this function is going to do is it is simply going to log a message in the console, maybe generic animal sound. Right. Now I'm going to create another class. I'll call it as dog. And this class, it is going to extend this animal class. Okay, and in there, we are going to have a method called bark. And from here also, I'm going to log a message. Okay, this is just a simple example which I'm giving here. All right, now let me create a function here. So let's call this function make creature sound. All right, and this function, it is going to take a parameter called creature, and this is going to be of type animal. Now keep in mind that this dog class is also inheriting from this animal class. Okay, so when we will call this function, let me call it here. To this function, we can pass an instance of animal class, or we can also pass an instance of dog class. So for example, let me create a variable. Let me call it as animal equals new animal. Okay, so to this make creature sound, I can pass this object of type animal, and then let me also create an object of type dog. So I'll create a variable dog equals new dog. And now let me again go ahead and let me call this make creature sound. To this, I'll pass an instance of dog. All right, so you see in both the cases, we don't have any errors. So when this function will be called for this creature parameter, since it is of type animal, we can pass an instance of animal class, or we can also pass an instance of dog class, because this dog class, it is inheriting from this animal class. Now inside this function, let's try to call creature.bark. You see we have an error here because this creature, it can store an instance of animal type also, but there we don't have bark method. If you see here inside this animal, we don't have bark method, we have make sound method. If I try to call creature dot make sound, here we will not have any error because this animal class, it is going to have that method make sound, and this dog class, since it is inheriting from this animal class, this dog class is also going to have that make sound method, right? So here we will not get any error. But if I say creature dot bark, in that case we will have an error because this animal class does not have that method. So here also, before calling this method, we need to do the type check. We need to check if the creature is of type dog, then only we would like to call this spark method. Otherwise, we would like to call the make sound method. Now here, I cannot go ahead and use type of operator like this. So I cannot say type of creature equals dog. This will not work here. Now why we cannot do it here? Because here it is going to be an object. Okay, when we use the type of operator on an instance of a class, in that case, it is simply going to return us object. It is not going to return us the class name. Okay, so if I say type of creature, and if this creature is storing an instance of animal class, it is not going to return animal. It is simply going to return object. In the same way, if this creature stores an instance of dog class, this type of operator is not going to return us dog. It is again going to return us an object. Okay, and this is just the JavaScript behavior. So here in this case, we cannot use type of operator. Now, what should we do in this case? In this case, we can use instance of operator. So here we can check if this creature, if it is an instance of dog class. Okay, so this instance of operator returns true if this variable stores an instance of this dog class. Otherwise, if this creature stores an instance of animal class, in that case, this instance of will return false. So basically, this instance of returns true if the variable is of a given type. Otherwise, it returns false. So if this creature is an instance of dog, in that case, we would like to call this creature.bark. So I'll put it inside this if statement. Otherwise, we will simply call creature dot make sound. Okay, and let's actually write it inside the else statement. All right, with this, if I save the changes, you see when we are calling this make creature sound and when we are passing animal, we are seeing this message generic animal sound, and when we are passing an instance of dog, we see this message. So here we are again guarding the type using instance of. So we can use this instance of for type guarding when working with classes. Again, let me go ahead and let me comment this code and let's see another type guard. Now let's say we have an interface and let's call this interface user. In this user interface, I have the name property of type string and I have an email property also of type string. Okay, now let me go ahead and let me create a function. I'll call this greet user. Okay, and this function, it is going to take a parameter of type user. And inside this function, what I want to do is, first of all, let me make this email as an optional property. Okay, so this email is an optional property in this user interface. This name is a mandatory property, so whichever class will inherit from this interface, it will have to provide the implementation for the name, but this email is optional. So now here inside this function, I'll use this console.log statement, and there I want to log this message. Here let me use template literal syntax, and there I want to log the message hello, and then dollar in the curly braces I'll say user.name, your email is, and let's also try to log the email of the user. So for that, let's say user.email. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's call this greet user function, and to this function we need to pass an object which will have a name property, and it can or cannot have email property because email is optional here. So for example, here if I pass name property, let's say John. Okay, you see we do not have any error because the email property is optional. And again, let me call this greet user, and let's pass name as Mark, and let's pass email as mark@gmail.com. All right, let's save the changes. And you see, we have this message, hello John, your email is undefined, and hello Mark, your email is mark@gmail.com. Now here we don't have any error, but if you see, for the email, it is logging undefined. And this is some unexpected behavior which we might want to avoid. Here in place of interface, we can also use type. Okay, so that is also possible, and we will have the same behavior. If I save the changes, still you see the message is hello John, your email is undefined, and hello Mark, your email is mark@gmail.com. So when we are not passing the email, we are not getting any error, but when we are trying to write user.email, we are seeing this result undefined. And this is not something which we want to do in our real world projects. So here also we can do the type check. Now here we cannot use instance of, because for an interface we cannot create an instance. And here this user, it is of type. It is not a class. It cannot have an instance. Okay, here we are specifying a type to which we can assign an object, but that object will not be an instance of this user type. In the same way, if we use interface, we cannot create an instance of the interface. And that's why we cannot use instance of in this case. Then in this case, what should we do? What we can do here is we can use another type guard. So again, I'll write if statement, and here we will check if email property, if it exists. So for that, we can use this in operator, and then we can specify the type. So I can say user. And here, instead of using the type name, we need to use the variable name, which in this case is user with lowercase u. Okay, so if this email property exists in this user, in that case, we would like to log this message where we will also log the email. So I'll cut it from here and paste it inside this one. Otherwise, we will simply print the username. So let me copy this console.log statement. Let's paste it here. Okay, and it should be backticks actually. Okay, with this, if I save the changes, you see when the email is not passed, in that case, it simply says hello John. Otherwise, in other case where the email is there, it says, hello Mark, your email is mark@gmail.com. So using this in, we can check if a property exists in a given type. Now here we are not using type name. Instead, we are using the variable of that type. Here we are using the variable of this user type. And same thing we can do with interface also. So instead of type, if I use interface, in that case also it should work. Here I'll simply remove this equal to, and let's save the changes, and it should still be working. So these are some of the type guards which allows us to save the types. We talked about this in operator, which acts as a type guard in case of an interface or type. We talked about this instance of, which also acts as a type guard in case of classes. And we also talked about this type of operator, which acts as a type guard in case of simple types. This is all from this lecture. If you have any question related to type guards, then feel free to ask it. Before I wrap up this lecture, I also want to mention that you can also create your own custom type guards with some more complex logics based on your requirement. But that I'm not going to cover in this course because that is something which we rarely do. But if you want me to cover that topic also, please let me know in the comments and I will record a lecture on custom type guards as well. This is all from this lecture. Thank you and have a nice day.